Hey everyone, Rob here with Food, Wine, and Whiskey. Welcome back to part 2 of our episode on building a case of wine for a friend. We're going to jump right back into it, get back to the conversation. Hope you enjoy, and again, thank you for listening. Okay.
All right.
Carter?
Let me consult my list. This has been fun already.
Yeah, part of this exercise for me is fun to see how many we actually have that are different, but because of approach, and your approach, I struggled with, do I go that way to let people see what the difference can be, or do I just want them to kind of get into as much as possible? And ultimately, I ended up going, I want to get them as much as possible.
In fairness, the back half of my list is more of that.
Okay.
I'm just going to throw some styles that I think are really good.
Okay. Has there been one named yet, Todd, that you haven't had?
Yeah.
Chenin Blanc, you said.
I think that's it.
Okay, just that one. Yeah. Chardonnays you've had, champagnes you like.
Yep.
Cremant. You ever had any Cremant?
No.
Okay.
Actually.
It's not a big spin, so I'd say like it's worth trying it.
It's definitely worth trying.
And there are rules with Cremant. Like, I mean, it's a traditional method wine.
People think it's champagne or it's Prosecco and Spumante. Cremant, I think, is much closer to champagne
it's
in
way much
quality
closer,
and
yeah.
style.
Oh, I think so too.
You don't have. It's like if you look at a menu, it's like, oh, we have this champagne that's $40 a glass, or we have this Prosecco that's $12. And so in your mind, you think, well, those are the spectrums of sparkling wines. And there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah. Which brings me to my selection. So I actually, I'm going to start out with kind of just sparkling rosé is what I'm going to say. And that can come from, you can get great examples in champagne.
Which are often more expensive than the other ones. Usually rosé champagne is the more expensive.
It is more
Generally speaking, yeah. But there's sparkling rosés in Cremant. There's sparkling Cava. But
Prosecco, that's a new thing as of a couple of years ago.
Well, yeah. But I would tend to go to Franciacorta rather than like a Prosecco, something that's more of the traditional method. Anyway, I mean, I'm sure the English even make sparkling rosés. I don't know they do, but maybe.
And here's a weird one. In Australia, they make sparkling reds.
Sparkling, full-bodied reds.
Full-bodied reds that are sparkling.
Cool.
Talk about weird.
That's in Australia.
Mm-hmm. Went to a winery called the Fowles Winery that they make a couple of different sparkling reds.
Okay.
It's very popular there, actually.
Really?
And I would say even in America, we have some traditional method wineries like a Schramsberg. I brought one tonight that is a sparkling rosé. Fantastic. They have most of the Schramsberg wines are vintage wines. So they actually have the vintage on the label and everything like that. They may only do that.
Yeah, but their Blanc de Blanc can go toe-to-toe with a lot of champagne.
Yeah.
But from California, have you ever had California Cook's champagne?
I've had it in an orange juice.
It may set you back about $7.
You know, believe it or not, my wife and I, we went to the beach last week, and so we're buying. Houston, we're blessed in Houston to have a lot of different options for wine. You go elsewhere, maybe not. But believe it or not, like Mum Napa is a traditional method wine.
Is it really?
Yeah. They
doesn't mean you do the method well.
But it doesn't mean you do the method well. But at least that they
second fermentation.
They have a second fermentation.
They're trying to make it the same style.
I give them credit for that because it's just more expensive to begin with.
It's a lot more expensive.
Yeah. And so I give them credit for that.
And you're talking about like with that particular type of wine. I mean, you're talking about $25 or something.
Yeah.
So you're not going to expect much. But anyway, at least you can know that there is a producer that does a traditional method. So anyway, I just say rosé is fun. Sparkling rosé is fun. If you like fruit, this is fun.
Okay.
And some of them have some nice brioche notes combined with the fruit, which is, I mean, to me, that's great. And you can lay them down for a long time. One of the best wines that I ever had was a Dom Perignon 2005 Brut Rosé. I mean, awesome. Great wine. I think.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, we that was an anniversary thing. But like, To be honest, though, you could do a lot worse for $250. Like when I say like I bought that wine retail $250.
That's been a few years.
It's been a few years, yes, but still,
Their regular vintage is $275, I think now.
God, it's so bad.
I know.
That's it. You used to be able to get that wine for like a little over 100.
This is going to sound crazy. I still think it's a relatively good value at that price.
And
That sounds like an
the current
incredibly
stuff
stupid
that
thing
they
to
have
say.
out at the store. Is it like 2009, 2008? Is the last I saw.
No, it'll be 14.
12s.
Is it?
I thought.
12s and
12s
9s. If you
12s
find a
and
9,
14s.
get a 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I got one like a year ago. I thought.
If you can find, speaking of 16 for Italy, if you find a 08 champagne, buy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are great
If
too.
you see an 08, I don't care who makes it. If you see an 08 champagne on the shelf right now, buy it.
Yeah.
So anyway,
That's number 2. You have one.
that's number 1.
Oh, that was number 1.
Yeah. So the next is also a sparkling wine, but I say this is something I want to be very specific about. I think there is a unique experience about having champagne that is Blanc de Blanc. You want to have the champagne, what they call the king of champagnes or whatever. You want to have a Blanc de Blanc, 100% Chardonnay champagne from Champagne. You need to have that in your box, and that's fine to spend a little bit of money. Like I said, I picked up a Blanc de Blanc Veuve Clicquot for a big house, 2012, great vintage, for $80.
So what's the story with that brand? Because I see a lot of people kind of like,
Crapping on it?
yes,
No, it's good champagne.
because
It's good champagne.
Okay,
It's overpriced
yeah,
because of the hype and what it's
but
become.
people aren't making a bad choice.
No.
No.
It's under Roederer.
You could do better, but
I think they're making a bad choice because you can get better champagne for less.
Yeah, I don't buy it.
It's not bad wine.
That's what I mean. It's not. It's fine champagne. It's not like they're drinking a bad beverage. It's
No.
just you're paying more than you should.
To me, just the yellow label is kind of like, it's fine. You know, like I'll drink
It's
it.
gotten up now to what, like $65?
yeah.
Yeah,
It's ridiculous what it's going up to, but it's
can get
you know
some
I get
really
it
good
because
stuff for that.
people are paying for
But
it.
even the Heidsieck these days, like you're getting a great deal at 40. But
Yeah.
like, I mean,
it's
most
up to
people are
$70 at most places.
people are paying. Yeah, I mean, so this like champagne's like doing that.
Yeah,
I put Veuve and Piper kind of on the same level.
I would agree with that.
And
I
so
would absolutely
Piper's quite a bit cheaper.
like $45, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
40, 45.
Yeah,
But-
but what I guess
But it's not a bad wine at all.
But at a vintage in 2012,
The vintage
you got-
one, that's a different story.
that's a different story.
Yeah.
That's a
Completely
totally
different
different story.
But you can find some grower champagne vintages from some of the vintages that we're talking about.
Well, and to the point you made a second ago, their rosé, I think, is far better.
Oh
than
yeah, their rosé's good.
Their standard, yeah.
Yeah, their standard non-vintage rosé is way
Yeah,
better.
but their standard is just, it's okay.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, like honestly, like if somebody offers it to you, you're not drinking bad champagne.
No,
If somebody gives it to you for a gift, you're not going to re-gift it. You'll drink that.
Yeah, drink it.
Exactly
Yeah, it's
right.
good.
And it's one of those that gets given as a gift a lot because it's well known. It's got a recognizable label. It's a decent price point.
they marketed it well.
It may
Yeah.
be the number one gift champagne. That's
Oh, it definitely.
And-
purely anecdotal, but just from going through social media, you see that a lot.
Well, and I think part of it is your criteria for buying a bottle, Carter.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a cool bottle.
That's a cool bottle.
It's got a nice label.
A
It's-
nice
it's
label.
good.
Everybody kind of knows it.
But I mean,
you know?
the same price range you're talking about, Bollinger and Tatangier and
Oh,
some
sure.
of these that are just
Bollinger's
love
fantastic.
Bollinger.
Yeah, I mean, again, $45 for you can't beat it. Yeah.
Well, and they're a good example of, because like Dom Perignon does not have an entry level wine.
Well, they're yeah.
Yeah.
So Bollinger's a good example where they do have the $40 entry level, but then they have like the Grand Ani that's $150, $160.
Same with Charles
That's
Heidsieck.
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so number
third.
3 is
Or number 6.
well,
In your
yeah,
case.
number 6. I've moved on from white wines, so I don't know where to
Go ahead.
go.
No, your case is your case. dude.
Segue away.
Yeah, so I went with a Rioja, just Gran Reserva. You know, you can find one in. I mean, you know,
Does it have to be a Grand Reserve?
no, but
Okay,
I just
thank
think
you.
it
So I think
doesn't have
Rioja's
to-
great.
I don't think
and-
so, but I just mentioned the Grand Reserva because you can find so many of them.
I'm now kind of mad I don't have that on my list.
Let me
because
ask-
it's such a good value.
Let me ask you a question. When you say Rioja, does it have to be Rioja, or are we talking more Tempranillo in Spain? Or do you want to focus on Rioja?
Like for a bottle, an example, like, you know,
Okay.
like as we're talking, like my thing is like I'm filling the case with things that like you
Totally
can,
agree.
And you're not talking about something that's prohibitively expensive, so you don't need to move to something else.
No, I mean, you could spend $30 or less on this bottle, like very easily.
I think it's a fantastic choice.
And I love Tempranillo. Like I just think it's a. There's one of my honorable mentions that's also kind of in this.
We're not there yet.
Category. I understand.
I'm just kidding.
But Tempranillo is one of those grapes that doesn't get the love that it needs to get.
Well, don't stop putting it out there.
Yeah, understood.
I don't actually have it on my list, but that I'm going to write it down now of just a grape that I think doesn't get the love that it should. But we'll.
Oh, a different one?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. In your honorable mention section.
Yep.
Okay, so that's your 6 is done.
My 6 is done.
I'm not going to spend a lot of time because, again, we have some redundancy here, which we would expect. Chardonnay, but I'm going, instead of Chablis, I'm going to stay in Burgundy. And I know there's this perception that Burgundy's freaking expensive, and it is. But there's still some places that you can go in Burgundy. And I'm going to take you to the Macanaise, to Macon. And I think $23-25, you can still get a beautiful Chardonnay from there. That's the trick with Burgundy is you don't have to go to the big regions that are, just because they're known, they are charging you ridiculous prices. These places still make, I mean, it's hard in today's world with technology and everything and understanding, it's hard to make bad wine, you know, if you know what you're doing. So some of these regions aren't as well known, so they just can't drive because people don't know them. They're not buying their stuff. So they're still very reasonably priced. But the quality, if you looked at them over the last 20 years, the quality has come up so much. They're just not getting the recognition and driving up the cost. So that's number 4 for me, champagne. I mean, you just got to have champagne. And in somebody's case, if you're getting into wine or want to explore more and you haven't got into it, when I give you the bottle of champagne, I'm going to tell you that when you open it, we need to sit down, we need to talk so we kind of understand what you're getting here. Champagne is so complex. You know, there's so much depth there that I think you can't just tell them to drink it at home and get it. You got to kind of almost walk them through it a little bit.
Yeah. And tell them whatever you do, don't put your thumb under the cork trying to
don't think it's going to be tough to get out.
It's not how to do it.
Keep your hand on top of the cage and rotate
6
the bottle.
half turns. Yeah. That's if people that don't know, every sparkling wine has adapted the 6 half turns on the cage and then fold it up.
Yep.
Yeah. And then I'm going to throw the curveball here. I thought about putting this at the end, but I just think you have to have a fortified wine in a case, and I went Madeira.
Okay. I did not put one in my case, but I like that.
I recently have fallen in love with fortified wines, and I think if you're going to get into wine, the big world that is wine, a form of fortified wine needs to be in there, and I just happen to go with Madeira.
Okay. Fair enough, man.
So that's my 4, 5, and 6. So I guess I'm going to come back with 7, 8, 9.
You're up.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go now to the Right Bank Bordeaux. I'm going to kind of take 2 grapes here and, screw sideways. I'm a fan of Merlot.
Yeah.
I think Right Bank Merlot heavy wines are fantastic. And go ahead.
And anecdotally, the wine that he lusted after
I
and finally
know.
opened is a Right
the
Bank
end.
Merlot.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
I know that.
The irony of
the
that.
irony
Yeah.
of it, yeah. Well, I mean, there's something magical about Merlot, Cab Franc, like, the blend there.
In fairness, Merlot can be incredibly boring.
Can be.
Super flabby, just something I don't want to drink. But it can also be pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And a lot of places can do it well and not for super expensive. You can go to Pomerol, you can go to Margaux, you can still get, $25 to $40 a bottle and get what is a very good example of a solid wine from there. And I'm kind of knocking out two grapes that I like with the Merlot because typically you see Merlot and Cab Franc blended there. So that's what I'm taking there. And then I'm coming back to where you were just at, Carter, Tempranillo.
Yeah.
I think when you get to Spain, and I would also say start in Rioja, and typically
branch out from there.
Yeah, branch out from there. Go up north to the how do you say it? The Douro.
Yeah.
But typically Tempranillo over there is blended with some Grenache, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful wine.
I love that.
To your point, value. you're not going to spend. I mean, right now, I saw on the shelf the other day a 2004 Grand Reserva sitting on the shelf, $59. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can't beat that. So you're getting, and a lot of the wineries in Spain, they hold it in their house.
Yeah.
They let it age there. You don't have to sit on it. You can just go buy it already aged. How do you not, take advantage and appreciate that? It's just one, as you can tell, I'm very fired up about, because I just think Tempranillo in Spain is, I don't know if it's underappreciated. I just don't know that it's as well known as it should be, the quality that's there. I think all the other bigger grapes.
And it may be kind of a detriment that you're putting it into the box, because you're introducing a friend that will probably introduce other friends.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good point. There's a specific wine I wanted to have in my box, and my wife expressly said, you cannot mention this wine. So I'm not
For that reason?
Yeah.
So I'm not going to.
Well, the next one to round out number 9 for me is one that Tyler doesn't like, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. Syrah from the Rhone Valley. I know, I'm just teasing you. It's one of his favorites.
Bro,
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure he does like that wine.
Yeah.
it's on the list.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just think, I would start you at a Côte de Rhone, just budget-wise.
Yep.
You can go up from there. You can get into the...
I'd go Cross Hermitage.
Yeah,
or,
sure you would, baller.
I mean,
Yeah. But, $20 and up, you can get something pretty solid.
But I mean, those can still be very
Oh, yeah.
reasonable.
They
compared
have
to
produced.
Hermitage or
Yeah.
Côte Rôtie or
Yeah.
something
Totally
like
agree.
that.
Totally
Yeah.
agree.
That's the value in North Rhone.
Yeah,
And see,
or
he-
Cornas, maybe.
San Josef, I think, is actually the best value in North
Yeah.
Rhone, but
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where I land on through my 9 is Syrah, I think, is a grape that a lot of people don't mention when they talk about some of the greater grapes of the world. Obviously, the Bordeaux blend always gets mentioned. Pinot Noir always gets mentioned. I think Syrah is up there in my estimation.
and if I may, just to throw it out, pet peeve, Syrah and Petite Syrah are not the same grape.
No, they're not.
No.
No, do people think they are?
Yeah, I'll say something about loving Syrahs from the Rhone Valley and go, I love Petite Syrah.
Really?
No, that is
That-
not
not
even
the same.
remotely the same thing.
Okay, I want to. Did you know Sangiovese in Chianti is a different grape than Sangiovese Grosso in Brunello?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Also, distinct difference.
Yeah, a lot of people would just think Sangiovese, but it's a little bit different. The Grosso up there. Yeah.
Not as different as Syrah.
Not as different, but I just thrown it out there.
Petite Syrah, yeah.
I'm okay. So my next 3, we've already gotten into the reds, but now I'm really in. I feel like you have to have a Burgundy wine in your box,
Okay.
and I'll explain why.
White or red? Red. You said. Okay.
Red Burgundy. You can even get we remember a few weeks ago or maybe a couple months ago. I lose track of time these days. We even had a village wine that was
be
really good.
$30
and I just feel like that's your best. It's kind of like going back to the branching out from there type thing. That is Pinot Noir at its best. If you want to branch out from that, go for it. But this is the gold standard for Pinot Noir.
There's a handful of grapes and locations where you can pinpoint this is the best version of it. And I think most people would agree. Pinot Noir and Burgundy, really nothing comes close.
Yeah. So I just feel it's if you want to, you can spend as much as you want, and you can go to, Grand Cruise, whatever you want to do, or you can drive. You can buy a village Burgundy, and I think that you're not going to really go wrong. You're going to get a good example of the grape.
The wine advice I would give to people listening, going, okay, well, Burgundy, but what about in the States? I would say stay away from Napa.
Yeah.
And go more Central Coast, go Santa Barbara, go Santa Rita Hills, Yanez Valley.
I'd be going to Washington.
For Pinot? Really? I'd probably stop in Oregon before I got up to
Oregon or Washington.
Washington.
I'd be moving out of California.
Really? Have you had
Personally.
Santa Rita Hills in those
I
areas?
have. Yeah.
Okay.
No, there's some good ones. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. I just seem to prefer those over the Oregon ones that I've had.
Usually my problem with New World Pinot is that they lean very heavy into the barnyard, and I don't love that.
Really? I have
Don't
not
love that.
picked that. I've seen more of the riper, fruitier kind of,
I've had quite a few that get very heavy into the bready barnyard thing, and that's not my favorite.
Okay.
So the second selection of this trio,
Number 8.
I'm a Grenache fan.
Okay.
And I think that if you want a good example of Grenache, you got to go to Southern Rhone, and you have to have a Chateauneuf de Pape. Okay. I just feel like, you can go to Gigondas, you can go to, where Vaccaray, you can go wherever you want to go. But I feel like the gold standard is getting a Chateauneuf de Pape, and that's a good example of Grenache.
Yeah, the only challenging thing with Chateauneuf is there's 13 grapes they can use.
Yeah.
So you may get a Chateauneuf that has 0 Grenache.
Really?
Pretty rare.
Yeah.
They're almost all going to have
They're usually Grenache heavy, too.
They're usually Grenache heavy.
Yeah.
But 13 different grapes, which is interesting because that's one of those wine regions, I think, those appellations, it's very well revered, where you would think it would be like 1 or 2 grapes. Mm-hmm. It's not.
I know.
There's a ton of stuff they can put in it.
You can put white wine. You used to have to put white wine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could use that for champagne, though. I mean, yes, there are 3 primary grapes, but there's like 6 other grapes, varietals in champagne that you can.
I think there's only 3.
Yeah, I didn't know if there's.
I'm pretty sure there's more.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's interesting when you mentioned Tempranillo, and I said there's a grape I'm going to write down. It's Grenache.
Okay.
Or Garnacha in Spain.
Garnacha. Yeah, but a lot of even a lot of the Riojas though they put a lot more Grenache in there.
Well, and I would say this: if you asked me, I love Chateauneuf de Pape, but I think of it more of that blended kind of wine.
Mm-hmm. Very much blend, yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't think of it as being,
It's not a varietal wine.
No,
at all.
But I would go to Spain for a Grenache. And then I'm going to get 100%. Have you had a Spanish 100%?
Yeah, that's
Those,
very good.
I think, can be very, very good.
Another one I would throw out there, because I think it is criminally underrated, is anything from like the Languedoc. Some of the Grenaches from there are fantastic.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a very underrepresented part of wine in France.
Okay, so I'd say there, just because it's a great example of, generally speaking, Grenache, and also a particular style that I just really enjoy.
I think that for sure. And I think it's a wine that you can still get a decent Chateauneuf for $45, $40, $45.
I mean,
sometimes less. I've got
sometimes less.
$25.
Yeah.
And some of them can be very Grenache heavy and ready to drink right now. Like 2019 was a very ripe vintage. You can drink it right now.
Yeah.
There's also some, to me, the average rule is like 7 to 9 years for Chateauneuf. Is kind of what it needs. But there's some that are 20 years or more. Like some of the Beaucastels that are much, much longer aging. So
I'd also say, like, you can still find kind of like you said, you can find decently priced bottles. And then I know it, like, sometimes I just see random stuff coming out. Obviously we're in Houston, we're at Specs, and I'll go, damn, they just put that on the shelf for like $50, and it's like a 2008 vintage or like whatever. You can still find those, now less and less as the popularity grows, but
there's some online stores that, if you follow them, you could almost call them like grower Chateauneufs, where it's much smaller producers that are making really good wines for $20, $25, $30.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I need
that site.
Yeah, and one of the ones that you and I have talked about before, who is that producer? The Cuvée du Lion.
Oh.
Which producer is that? Black Bottle. You know the one
Yeah,
I'm
I
talking
know
about?
the one you're talking about.
It's like a $30 bottle.
Yeah.
And they're phenomenal for the money.
I think I might have one, yeah.
You gave me one, so I know you probably got some
I'm
more.
pretty sure I have some more. I'll pull it up. I'll pull one out.
Next on my list is one that Rob had. I love Merlot, and I think the best examples that you get, it's obviously a blend as well, but Right Bank Bordeaux. I mean, I just think they're good. There can be. I mean, they can be overpriced. They can be, great value. I mean, it's a random smattering of different things. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, you don't have to buy the big name. I guess that's the point.
No, and I think people getting into wine, something we've touched on with both of us putting this in there, is that there's right bank, left bank, and a lot of people just think Bordeaux and don't necessarily
Pretty different
understand.
style.
Yeah.
Different grapes, different styles.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
You say a Merlot, but then you say a blend. Does it just have to have a certain percentage of that grape to be called a Merlot, or what?
So here's the distinction. Old World always talks about region. That's on the bottle.
It's all about place.
It's all about place because they have very rigid rules that if you're in this place, this is all you can use to make wine. Where in the States, a lot of people see Cabernet Sauvignon or Merlot on a bottle. 95% of the time, it's still a blend. They just have to have 75% of that varietal or more to be able to put it on the front of the label. It's typically still a blend. If it's not, they usually want to tell you that it's 100% Cabernet, estate grown from wherever.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't say that, you can sort of assume that maybe it's a blend or that it's likely.
Unless it
doesn't say
says 100%, it's a very, very good chance
In Bordeaux,
in the U.S. that it will be a blend.
Yeah, in Bordeaux, you rarely see anything other than a blend. I don't know. They make them, I'm sure, 100% something, but it's very rare.
Yeah.
If you had one, it would be Left Bank Cab Sav.
Yeah, I would agree.
That's
Yeah.
about the only place I think you'd see it.
And then a lot of times what you'll see, and they make some good examples of this in Napa, which would be they'll call it a red blend or a blend. And it might be, 57% of whatever and then blended, but it didn't meet that 75. But it can still be a good wine. I mean, there's some examples of that.
Yeah. That's me.
But that's the thing about most old world places, Spain and everything that says Rioja. You have to know it's Tempranillo, Burgundy. You have to know they use Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. Where in the States, we just tell you what it is, and they can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Napa does everything.
And that's what makes Old World a little bit more confusing for the
And
for the general consumer.
Well, and you have very similar names. So two of the ones that I've mentioned, Pouilly Fumé and Pouilly Foussé, two very different grapes from two very different places.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you can see that and you're like, oh, it's the Pouilly F something. Yeah, I've had that.
Yeah. No, you
It could
have.
be something completely different.
Yeah.
It doesn't say, nowhere on there does it say Chardonnay or Sauv Blanc.
Yeah. Okay.
That's me.
Yep.
I'm done.
All right. Next. All right. So I'll move into the reds. This is another similar set to my Chardonnay one. I would tell someone to spend $40 on a Napa Cab.
Okay.
On some Napa Cab. And there's some different examples of ones because there are people that's their style.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the most, for a red wine, one of the most crowd-pleasing styles.
So that's my question to you. Are you trying to get them to...
I'm trying to get them to figure out what they like with the hope that they realize the other comparison I'm giving them is better.
So you have another cab on your list?
I do.
Okay, then I'm going to
So the
shut
next
up.
one is Left Bank.
Okay.
I'm more of a left bank. I love right bank, but I'm more of a left bank person. I think what a lot of times this is going to upset a lot of people. I think a lot of times what Napa's trying to do is recreate or compete with left bank Bordeaux. The cab blends, I think that's what a lot of it is going after.
I think where Napa has kind of gotten off what they should be doing or what they used to do was they used to make wines, I think to your point, to try to not mimic, but be an example of what could be in Napa that is in Bordeaux, Left Bank.
It was to fill that demand.
But I think what they've done in the last 15, 20 years is, again, it gets back to making what the consumer likes. And they like this big, jammy, over-extracted red, wine. And a lot of people get confused with, they'll drink a Napa Cab, a big Napa Cab, and think it's sweet. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's not sweet. There's no residual sugar in there. It's just fruity. It's all fruit.
Yeah.
There is no balance or structure to this wine. And that's where I wish Napa wouldn't do that. If you go back and drink, we had a 1984 George Latour from Bouvie last week at dinner.
Great wine.
Beautiful wine. And on a wine list for $218, you can't beat that.
Oh yeah.
Sure.
But you don't see wines in that style. You're not going to take a Napa Cab now and age it for 30 years.
There are some, but there are.
But you're going to pay for that.
Yeah.
There are very few. And that's what we talked about price of entry. I don't think I would tell somebody to buy a Napa Cab that's less than about $40.
Oh yeah.
Hard to find
Totally agree.
something that's worth drinking. So I've got that, and then the Left Bank to kind of compete with it. I think you can get a lot cheaper. Some of the Cru Bourgeois, there's some really good ones. But to me, I think if you spend $40 or $50 on the Left Bank, you're going to get blown away. That is we talked about certain grapes in certain places. I think left bank, cab, those two belong together.
There's still some gem areas over there that like if you think of Bordeaux, it's huge. I mean, like we're talking like a massive area. So there's some lesser known areas.
Still are, absolutely.
I guess the point that I would make on that is you have to hunt a little bit more.
And you should.
Yeah.
Because you get that bang for your buck. Those wines that you talked about punching up.
And there's the whole classification of 1855 where you've got the different growths. I think the only thing to take away from that, it is not that a second growth is better than a third or that a fourth is not as good as a second, because there are some fourth and fifth that I think are every bit as good as second and thirds. It's if they're in that classification, they're going to be good.
Well, there's some seconds that I think are way overpriced.
There are
for what they are.
Well, that's what
because
I'm saying.
They're just a second.
There's some fourth and fifths that don't get that love that I think are every bit as
agreed.
Good.
I'm just saying, don't go. Well, I don't want to spend $800 for a Mouton Rothschild, but I'll get their second label and spend $300. You may be better off spending $85 on something else that's going to be better than that second label at $300 and whatever.
Completely. Yep. Yeah. So I mean, one example, one of my favorite left bank wines is Chateau Bernier du Cru.
Okay.
I think depending on the year, you're talking $60 to $80.
Yeah.
I think they're fantastic. Chateau Gloria from Saint Julien.
Yeah.
Also in that same price range. Phenomenal
Chateau
wine.
Grisson.
Yep. So I would hope coming out of that, the person would taste I'll just use an example, the Jordan Cab. And then they would taste the Gloria and go, these are the same, but they're not.
Yeah.
And if they go with the Napa version, that's fine. Now we know, all right, let's explore that. Because there's plenty of great wine. Don't get me wrong. Napa cabs are phenomenal. They can be. But if they prefer the old world style, okay, we can run with that. And then you can even start branching into right bank that it's a different blend, but it's in a similar wheelhouse. You can kind of move them into that. It's more similar than Burgundy, for example. Even though it's a completely different set of grapes, that's a much easier segue, I think. So I've got those two, and then...
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So you did 2 Chardonnays, and you did of different styles and 2 different cabs. So like for me, again, not knowing as much about wine, those are 2 of like the 4 or 5 varietals that you see on like every... If there's a shorter wine list, if there's only...
It will always be.
Yeah.
Right. So do you put them on there because you're catering to a novice, or do you also enjoy those styles?
There's a reason those are some of the most well-known grapes. As
Definitely.
opposed to... I mean, there's some other grapes that I think are great that, like, unless you're a wine nerd, nobody's ever heard of it.
Yeah.
There's a reason why those have a huge name. But part of it also is if I'm building a case for a friend and I only have, a Sirtico on there, they're going to be like, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
And immediately just be like, oh, this is just weird.
I think it's good because, again, if you're getting people into different styles and regions, if they're actually out trying to taste things, it's more likely they're going to come across different Chardonnays and cabs. And well, the one thing that I noticed you guys didn't put on there, because again, for me, like it's Merlot, Cabernet, Chardonnay, and like Pinot Grigio on the white side. So what are your thoughts on Pinot Grigio? Because that's another very popular.
Can be
a
great.
lot of people.
Can be great.
Yeah.
So
can be simple.
There are a lot of...
More often than not is simple.
Yeah.
It's hard to... I think it's on there a lot because it can be just clean and refreshing, a little
It's an
fruit.
easy drinker.
And it's not going to offend anybody.
Yeah. And also, if you're talking about wine lists, they're not curating a list of the best wines. They're curating a list that goes with their food. Pinot Grigio goes with a lot of food.
Yeah.
They should be.
Yeah.
Pinot Grigio goes with a lot of food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's easy drink. It's the porch pounder.
Yeah.
And I think, a lot of people who don't know a lot about wine, they go in that direction because, like, I think, as you said, it's easy.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just
It's
pleaser.
And it's funny we're talking about, wines that are grapes that are recognized and we, there's different names for different ones. So like Pinot Grigio, Pinot Gris, same wine. If I put a wine that I really like, I don't have it on my list, but it kind of fills the next thing that I was going to bring up, is Spätburgunder from Germany.
Mm-hmm. You know what that
You
is?
ever heard of it?
No.
It's Pinot Noir.
It's Pinot Noir.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And you can get it pretty good.
very reasonably
That's what
priced.
they call it in Germany.
Yeah, and you don't think about Germany and red wine. Think about Germany
really.
and
Not
white
yet.
wine. There are some red wines from Germany that are real
Yeah.
good.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, I guess my next one is Pinot, but it's going to be not Burgundy Pinot for now. And I guess since I'm turning this around, I'll do these together. I would do New Zealand or Germany Pinot.
Okay.
Because the next one then is Burgundy. And that's my next comparison.
I think New Zealand you can find a little bit. Could be a little tougher to find that German.
It is. And so I would not have brought that up if I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But maybe a Australian Pinot, maybe a New Zealand Pinot,
Yep.
maybe even an Oregon or Washington Pinot.
Could see that.
There's Pinot grows. Pinot can grow in different places. It's also one of the most difficult to work with. There's a wine channel that I know you and I both like, and you've probably seen it too, where a guy on there says you can make good Pinot, you can make cheap Pinot, but you can't make good cheap Pinot. It's a very difficult grape to make well.
Yeah. Conditionally, it's tough.
It is.
You brought up something we hadn't mentioned yet when talking about the wine list and food. We're talking about, a lot of people may not know, or they just think wine's a drink, but it's really meant to be had with food for the most part. There's some wines that are made that, always call Napa Cab a porch pounder. We're going to have some old world probably with dinner. If we want to have wine out back after, it's going to be maybe a Napa Cab in the glass.
And that's such a hot topic, kind of a hot button issue, is pairing food with wine. Because yes, it can make a wine, it can break a wine. Same with the food. I also think there are rules that can be broken. And if you like the food and you like the wine, that's more important than forcing a wine that you don't like because it, quote, pairs well with the food.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
I have had seared salmon with a big left bank Bordeaux and loved it.
Perfectly fine.
That's not something that's supposed to work.
The only simple rules I would say is you don't want something that's going to make the alcohol in a wine worse.
Yes.
So spicy food you're not going to have with a big alcoholic wine.
Yeah. Right.
So understanding that part of it, then pick what you want.
That's right.
Yeah.
There is no right or wrong answer. And most people overthink that. You don't need to. You're really not going to make a bad choice. Pair whatever you want for the most part. It's going to be hard to screw it up.
Yep. So I guess the last of my three on that one was the kind of New World Pinot. Then turning around for the new one would be Burgundy, because you can't have a list without Burgundy. I agree. That's one of those regions where the difference between the entry level and the most expensive may be one of the broadest. You can get some $30 ones that are really good, and you've got some that go for thousands of dollars.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So you can kind of pick your price point.
Yeah.
And I think it's a pretty safe region that if you pick pretty much anything in Burgundy at a price range you're comfortable with, it's going to be a good wine.
Are you going to pop? Did you bring an RDC tonight?
Yeah, I've got a couple.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, they're only $5,000 a bottle now. So.
Yeah.
Well, it was between that or a new car, and I thought,
Yeah, what the hell? I
money
like
on
Rob.
friends. I don't have a specific sub-region within Burgundy because I think there's so many that are good.
Yeah.
The next one that I've got, I guess that takes me to 10. So my, do you want me to just finish out my baker's dozen?
Yeah,
here?
you can finish out your baker's dozen.
All right, so I've got that. The next thing that would kind of go, this is where I mentioned I'm just moving into just wines that I would recommend. Brunello and Barolo. You can't talk about Italian wines without those two.
Man, you're going 2 grapes there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So
these are your 2 spots.
yeah, those are my 2
Okay.
spots. Yeah, those are. I'm not saying one or the other. 'Cause
Okay.
they're very
Yeah,
different. They're also ones that I think you pick a price point, you're going to get a pretty dang good wine. I love both. I think I'm more of a fan of Brunello.
I thought you might have went Nebbiolo so you could tie in Barbaresco.
No, but I think if we're on the subject of big bold reds, Nebbiolo just fits right.
Yeah,
in.
Absolutely.
Some Nebbiolos can be super punchy and really, really
Tannic.
good.
Yeah.
Super tannic.
Yeah.
Brunello, I think, can be a little bit more finesse, a little more refined, and I really enjoy that sometimes. So I think both are great. And then my last one on the subject of reds, I put just Southern Rhone. Whether it's Côte de Rhone, Vacheras, Gigondas, one of those, you kind of can't
It's
go
a
wrong
great
with those.
region.
And it pains me to not put anything on my list that's not North Rhone, because that's maybe one of my favorite wine regions, but it's also very polarizing. I think.
But I think you could put the Rhone Valley and you can cover both.
That's it. I mean, that's
Well,
a
yeah.
huge
When you
area.
learn wine, that's
Yeah.
that's
Huge
the
area.
region you learn. It's not southern or northern.
But
Yeah.
but essentially, I mean, you mentioned Chateauneuf. Love that. But if you kind of think about quality and price, you go from Chateauneuf to Gigondas to Vaccaras to Côte de Rhône. That's kind of the step down.
Yeah.
So in this sense, it's kind of pick your price point by which one of those you pick.
Yeah, sure.
If it's a $20 Côte de Rhône like the Saint-Côme, that I think is a
Oh,
phenomenal value wine.
that's a great wine.
That's
yeah.
one that I have to shout out because I think it's phenomenal. The new vintage is fine to drink. You don't have to sit on it for a long time. You can.
Oh.
3-5 years is great, but
You
right
can
now it's
just
good.
open it,
Yep.
and it's good.
So right now 21's on the shelf, but if you happen to go somewhere where there's a 19, the 19s
Oh, the
are
19
phenomenal.
is great. It's
right
great.
now the 19 is great. If you want to step up, Vaccaras for like $25-$30, maybe 35, Gigondas for 30 to 40, maybe 45, and then you're getting into Chateauneuf at the 35, 40, 50. I think Chateauneuf hits its stride at about 65 to 85, somewhere in there. There's obviously ones that are much more that are far better, but if you're comfortable spending $70, I would just go get a Chateauneuf. Yeah. So that's my Southern Rhone little area.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna finish out. I'm getting hungry.
Huh?
Okay,
I'm getting thirsty.
Yeah, and I'm getting thirsty. Okay, I am going.
I can't believe you weren't ready. You want me to go?
No, I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm going Barbaresco as my next selection.
I'm still wondering why you two aren't saying just Nebbiolo and then going.
Because I want to be, and I wanted to be more specific with Barbaresco because I feel like Barolo, you really
I
have
could
to.
have just named 13 grapes and we could have been done.
Okay, fair
But,
point.
but like
I'm just trying to maximize your grip because when you think Nebbiolo, you don't think globally that's being grown a lot of different places and
No,
at least making it well. So when you think
it's
Nebbiolo,
Piemonte.
it takes
Oh,
you
yeah,
to
it's right
Piemonte.
there. It's right
and
there.
that's why I would go with that region. I would say Nebbiolo so I could have
And it's
both.
interesting because Barolo, Barbaresco, they're such great wines and well known. You don't really see places outside of that trying to grow Nebbiolo.
It's hard.
No.
It's super hard.
Australia's trying.
They're trying,
Mexico's trying.
but it's tough.
It's tough.
But the reason I mentioned Barbaresco is, I mean, generally speaking, you're talking Barolo, you're talking heavy tannin, you got to lay it down. Generally speaking, or hey, if you want to pop it and leave it decanting for a long period of time, maybe.
Speaking of which, the 17 I brought, we probably should have opened like 2 hours ago. But whatever.
Yeah, but I like Barbaresco a little further down the mountain. You can open it up a little bit earlier. It's more of a good entry point for Nebbiolo grape. So that's,
Definitely more approachable. Like that one.
So that's that one. Number 2 on this set of 3, I had to go big California Cab, and I'll tell you, I actually have a specific bottle that I think is a good example of it, and I'll admit I've paid money for Joseph Phelps wines because I like Joseph Phelps. I think they're just standard Cabernet Sauvignon that is $60-ish, $65 or whatever. Is a nice bottle that everybody should have and try, and you get a great example of that. So I think that I would put that in my box.
I like Joseph Phelps, his $55 to $60 cab. I think that's a good call. I mean, the solid producer makes great wines, and it's not, super, super expensive for Napa.
And like we mentioned before, I think this friend that we're creating this box for, there's kind of an expectation like, how do you not have a Napa Cab in there?
Yeah.
It would just kind of be weird if you didn't, I think.
Well,
Yeah.
see, here's how my mind was working. I'm going, okay, we've said they dabbled in wine. And I'm going, okay, well, where did they probably start? So I'm thinking they were there. But to your point, I get it.
Yeah. So, and then just to finish off the list, and I'm going it's my favorite wine. And so it's going to be the last one that
Yellowtail.
You are so right. How did you know that? I'm just going to go Brunello because it is my absolute favorite wine.
Have you had a Brunello, Todd?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And like I said, if you can find some 16, just
Buy it.
Just buy it.
Okay.
You're not gonna overspend for that because they're generally available right now. So just buy them. You can drink it now. You can drink it 10 years from now.
I would drink the other 12 bottles in the box before you drink that one.
Yeah, yeah.
Now you have your Baker's Dozen. What was your 13th?
I thought that was that. Let me see. Did I miss that? I think I got all of mine.
Did you get them all? Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm going to finish off my last four, including the Baker's Dozen. I'm going to start. I know I mentioned Cab Franc on the right bank, but I think Cab Franc on its own in the Loire Valley,
I think it's one of my honorable mentions.
yeah, can be great. And I actually, if you can see, I marked out here because I thought about doing a Syrah in the Rhone and then contrasting that with a Syrah from Australia because that's kind of what they're Shiraz. Yeah, that's kind of what they're known for.
It definitely is, yeah.
So I ended up changing my mind, going, no, I'm not taking that approach with other things. Why am I going to do it here? So I went back to my Cab Franc because I think Cab Franc on its own can be beautiful. And Loire Valley, for a reasonable price, does a really good job with Cab Franc. So I went there. I'm back into Tuscany with Sangiovese. And with my approach, I'm starting you with a Chianti Classico or a Reserva.
Great value.
Yeah, great value. And I think, again, that's just going to trigger to go, this is delicious. What else is there? And it should lead you to Brunello at some point.
If the Chianti comes in the little basket, don't buy it.
Yeah. That's
the one rule.
Yeah,
that's the not good one.
Shouldn't be under $12.
Don't buy that one.
Yeah.
Like the wicker bottom.
Yeah. No.
Well, I'd also say that varietal, you're talking about Nebbiolo. I mean, there's not a lot of places that grow Sangiovese very well.
There's actually some places in Texas that are starting to grow it.
California has a couple places that does a pretty good job. Australia does it pretty good.
But
it's
far
a little
less
bit
than
it's way less than Cabernet or Merlot or Syrah.
And it's a delicate grape. I mean, it's a
lot of people don't know it's a great food wine too. Sangiovese is a great food wine. Most wines are.
Italians aren't going to make wine that doesn't go with food.
They think about food as they're making wine.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of Sangiovese. I mean, if you asked me to drink from one region in the world for the rest of my life, Tuscany is going to be my choice. It just is. It's not really that hard for me because I can go to Bulgari and get my big, Napa kind of or Bordeaux kind of blends. I can get all my Sangiovese.
Super Tuscans, man.
So there's a lot of diversity there, and so I feel like I kind of hit on a lot of different areas for me.
See, that's what I brought. So Google worked.
There you go. Absolutely. And then obviously you both mentioned it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Burgundy. I think you have to have a red Burgundy in your case.
It's also one of those that I think people think, I can't afford that. I'm not going to drink Burgundy. It's too expensive. It's like champagne. It's too expensive.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
What's the entry point? Like what number are we talking about?
You can get something.
Here's where I'm at. I'll tell you just because that's kind of the point of my pick here. I'm taking you to the Chalonnais. And the Chalonnais, you can get a great Burgundy for $30. You can get up to about 50. You're going to get fantastic. But again, it's this region that is not known. Most people, if you told them about the Chalonnais, they'd go, never heard of it.
Yeah, right.
And so you have to dig a little. But as a friend, I'm going to go, let me help you out. And that's the point of here's where I want you to start to get an expression of what this region can be. Now, if you want to say, I want to go spend a little bit more money because I want to explore and I want to drop 100 on a Premier Cru or a Grand Cru, that's up to you.
Yeah.
But you don't have to get what would be a really good wine in that region. And it shows what the sense of place.
That just reminded me of, or made me think of something I think could be good advice to someone. If you go to a store and it's the Burgundy section, for example, or it's whatever section it may be, and you don't recognize the location, it's probably a good value.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, even like Barbaresco, if you're like, well, I've heard of Barolo, but I'm not really sure what this is, but it's right here with it, it's probably a good value.
Yeah, for sure.
Totally agree. And then my Baker's Dozen, I went with you all. To your point, I was like, I got to throw a Napa Cab on there. If you notice, I didn't have a left bank on there because I figure most people in the wine world, if they've dabbled, they probably started with a Cabernet Sauvignon from somewhere. I would suggest that they go to left bank and try it there if you haven't, because Bordeaux is just classic, and it's Bordeaux. You should try it if you haven't.
Yeah.
But Napa Cab, I think, is its own style. My only thing would be, to your point earlier, $40 is the floor. I would say don't spend any more than $65. Find something in that range, and I would probably steer you to a Robert Craig, the Affinity, which is a more restrained version of Napa Cabs that to me, always has that kind of hint, that sense of old world to it. They've done a good job of the integration, the balance there. And that's Elton Sloan, that's his kind of goal when he makes the wines. And they only have that one, which is from the floor of Napa Valley, and beautiful. You wouldn't think it. But everything else they make is mountain fruit. So it's Howell Mountain, Atlas, Diamond, and everything's around $100. So if you wanted to go up, that's where I would steer you.
Cool.
Yeah. So, honorable mentions. Do you want to fire a few?
Sure. My first one was Loire Reds.
Okay.
Cab Francs, Chenin, something like that.
Yep.
Beaujolais,
Yeah.
which I can't believe we've gone this far without mentioning.
I wanted to put it on there, but
I didn't either.
Me too.
But it's kind. I mean,
it's not
not
that,
kind of. It literally is the poor man's Burgundy.
Yeah, I agree.
There was
so
a
many
time
people argue
where
that.
the grape Gamay that makes Beaujolais was the most widely planted in Burgundy.
It's
And
the parent of Pinot Noir.
Yeah, and the Duke of
Yeah.
Burgundy made him rip it all out.
Yep.
And plant Pinot instead. So it's long been kind of viewed as the peasant wine, which
Yeah.
I kind of love it for. With food, Beaujolais is fantastic.
Yeah,
I'm not a
absolutely.
huge fan of Beaujolais Nouveau. It's fine. It's kind of a
I don't even think it's fine. Pass it up. Don't ever buy it. It's
an
Thanksgiving
experience.
wine.
If you want to have it, it's fine. But a lot of people look at Beaujolais and think that's what it is. It is so much more than that.
Go to one of the 10 crews. Spend the $25, $35.
Mulat Avant is probably my favorite for the money.
Fleury is good.
Fleury is great.
Yeah.
Love Fleury. Malbecs from Argentina are a big fan. Are a big
Bingo.
favorite. Aussie Shirazes, which you mentioned. And then I just put dessert wines, which y'all kind of mentioned a little bit of.
Put that to you.
To me, tawnies from Australia are really, really hard to beat. They're made in the tawny port style, but obviously not port. Those can be great, but then people think Sauterne is super expensive because
You can get it less than $20 a bottle.
less than $20 for $3.75 because Dickium is super expensive.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. But like Syrah is $30 for $3.75
Yep.
and is
And if you're
widely rated in the high 90s by most rating agencies.
Yeah.
So there's some really, really good ones. That's where I would push people more towards is spend the $40 to $50 on a Sauterne if you want to get into a
Totally
dessert
agree.
wine.
And the only thing I would say, just throwing it out there about dessert wine, so people understand, you want your wine to be sweeter than whatever dessert you're having. Otherwise, it's just not going to be good.
Yeah.
So just understand when you get this, it's going to be sweet, but it's supposed to.
Yeah.
It's a dessert wine. It's
Yeah.
supposed to be.
But I think people would also be surprised with, especially a fresher Sauterne, how acidic it can be and
Yeah.
how bright it can be and how well it can pair with things.
Yeah.
Sure.
But then like the 87 that I mentioned, that Chenin Blanc from Loire, it's a Coteau de Lion. It's wild. It's almost like a copper color, but it's a lot brighter and fresher than you would think it would be for a 35-year-old white wine.
Oh, wow. Okay. You want to fire a couple?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just mention some stuff that he didn't mention. So Barbera, I love.
I do too.
Great pizza wine.
In Piedmonte, it's the most grown grape there.
It's so good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really enjoyable.
And now you're talking, 12 to $17, you get a great bottle.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
I think we talked about it, but I'll mention it. A Gruner. I think Gruners from Austria are just good. I mean,
Yeah.
and you can get decent value there and enjoy those wines.
You can get some that are weird.
You can get some. You can
that
get
are
some weird
really
ones.
Weird and good.
Yeah. And then I think we mentioned it, but like Super Tuscans, you can find some value there, honestly. And if you want the the big France grapes grown in Italy, there you go.
Well,
Yeah.
and I mean, you were talking about
Well, not necessarily,
the
but-
second label in Bordeaux, but you can also think about the second label of the second like appellation of a region, like Vino Nobile,
Yeah.
or a Rosso de Montalcino. It doesn't have to be Brunello.
Yeah.
You can get something
that's a
like
great
that that's
point.
essentially
Oh, yeah.
declassified Brunello for $20. That's phenomenal.
Oh, that's a
Yeah,
great
yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's put on the shelf earlier. It just doesn't meet a lot of the Asian requirements and things like that. But that's a great point.
Yeah.
And you still get some sense of what that wine is going to be like.
Yeah.
The same grapes. It's just.
For sure. But there's some things that come. You mentioned dessert wine, but I like Tokai. Yeah, that's something that.
Guys, so
Yeah,
good.
you took that one from me. I thought it might get passed over, but good job.
Sorry about that.
No, that's a good
I'm
one.
mad I didn't say that one.
Yeah.
No. And people don't know it's a wine from Hungary.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't know that, when I first heard it, I always thought, Tokai. Oh, okay, is that,
Japanese?
Yeah,
Is that-
something like that. But no, it's Hungarian.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Those are good. But
You guys covered on the honorable mentions a lot of what I had. I'm trying to look to see if there was anything else. There was one white wine that I really wanted to mention, and one region that I think is due a mention. The white wine is Albarino from Spain. I think is a great white wine.
You nailed it. Nailed it.
It's a good seafood wine. Really drinks really, really well.
Great value too.
Yeah,
I mean,
good value. The region that I've been exploring and really enjoy is Sicily. I've really enjoyed a lot of their whites, their Etna Biancos and their Nero de Alvas, and they have some indigenous grapes. And when you start getting into Etna on the mountain there, which is actually a volcano, that volcanic soil really got some great expressions of wines that are coming out of there for still a pretty reasonable cost.
Yeah.
So Sicily is one that I think you ought to look at when you get into Italy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, we mentioned looking at maybe a region or sub-region you've never heard of. Also, I encourage people to venture into countries that you wouldn't think would make good wine. Like if you see something from Georgia, which a lot of people didn't even know that's a country. They think it's a state. Yeah. They have a very long history of making wine. One of the longest histories of making wine.
Birthplace of wine.
Right. So
By a lot of estimations.
A lot of the wine there is great. Even places like Slovenia, you wouldn't think about
Croatia.
Croatia, yeah.
Croatia.
Greece.
Oh, Greece. They're talking about places that have been making wine forever. But even things that at first don't really make sense, like one of the bottles you brought tonight, a champagne style sparkling wine from England. There's a lot of big waves in England.
English
sparkling
bubbles
wine
have,
producers.
yes,
and
very good.
At the risk of starting to get political, because I don't mean to do that, but if global warming is happening, places like England are going to be the new place to grow things like sparkling wine.
Well, and to that point, varieties that are grown in a specific place now may change.
Well, and to be fair, to kind of the counterpoint to myself, the wines and the grapes that grow really well in the places they do now didn't grow there 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is part of just the evolution of everything.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be a day where we're growing Pinot in Canada.
I mean, it's better for some places. It's worse for it. It is what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally agree. I can't think of anything else. Todd, what did we miss?
No idea.
Have you ever had a Tokai?
No.
Have
You
you
love
ever
it.
had a Sauternes?
Yes.
Okay.
Then you would love Tokai.
Yeah. Tokai
Yeah,
is
those
very
are good.
similar.
I had a good Sauternes, and you guys may be able to guess it. I think it's pretty famous. It's definitely a 375, like pretty thick, and to me, like kind of. I think I made a comment online, joking because I knew that it was going to piss people off, but I said it just tastes like really good Welch's grape juice. It was sweet.
Do you remember how much it was for the bottle?
It was like $200 or $300 bottle,
Chateau d'Yquem. That's the only one it could have been.
and it was delicious.
Yeah, that's the only thing it could have been.
Yeah. Chateau d'Yquem is like
Basically, Sauterne is all within the 375s are like $25 to $60, and then Dickium's like $300.
Yeah.
There's nothing in between.
yeah. That's a very good point. But you can get some sub 20 or right around $20 Sauternes that are great.
Yeah.
The only thing I would say dessert wines that I also like, I'm a big fan of Italy, Vinsanto in Tuscany, and then also getting up into the Veneto with Ricciotto, which can also be very, very good.
Vinsanto is probably not in my top 5 favorite dessert wines.
Really? I'm a fan. Now,
It's good.
there it's typically made with a Sangiovese. Mm-hmm. We had it with and I might be getting this mixed up. One is very common with either Sangiovese and then the Trebbiano is the other one. One's very common, one's rare. We had the very rare one, which is absolutely delicious. And then it's the opposite up in the Veneto, where what's the red grape up there? I can never say it. The Valprieso or
Yeah, something like that.
yeah, is the common one. The white grape that makes the Suave is because that's what we had, the Ricciotto
Gran
Suave off of
Gracia
white,
or
which is
something.
so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, often with wine, it's the things that seem cliche and overplayed that are in fact the best.
Yeah.
And I think port's a good example. People look at port and they're just like, it's stuffy and whatever. I think it's the best version of dessert wine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna. I've only had tawny. I've never had a ruby port yet,
Okay.
so I still need to try that.
I
Difference.
mean, you've got Ruby, you've got LB, the late bottle vintage, you've got vintage port, and then you've got tawny.
Okay.
Tawny is probably the most approachable to most people.
Okay.
It's already oxidized. It's a little bit more like Madeira.
Kind of nutty.
Much more nutty,
Yeah.
raisiny, that kind of thing. But I was telling Todd before this, I came across a new one. It's maybe one of the smallest wine growing regions in all of Europe. It's super tiny, right outside of Porto, called Carcavelos, and it's like port and Madeira had a baby, and it is phenomenal.
Wow.
Nice.
Okay.
Super nutty, but much more fresh. It's really, really good stuff.
Wow. Very cool. Have you had all of those versions of port? Neither have
No,
I.
no. I've only had tawny port.
I mean, I'm just getting into fortified
Yeah,
wines the
me
last
too.
year, so I'm learning. But man, they are absolutely delicious.
And then, I mean, like sherry that
Better
we were
shelf
having
life.
earlier, talk about a wide range. Like Fino sherry is super bone dry all the way to PX, which is
Sweet.
thick, sweet.
Okay.
And it's a huge range of.
So that's how you knew that was a PX. When I poured that,
color.
I was like, "Holy cow!" Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Cool.
mean, Fino is. I mean, it looks like a white wine. I mean, it is a white wine, but it's very pale.
Talking about all this wine, I'm ready for a
Let's
little.
drink some more.
Yeah.
Maybe cook
I
a little
agree.
pizza.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right, let's do it. Thanks, everybody, for listening to this episode of Food, Wine, and Whiskey. And until our next episode, enjoy your next pour.